Kaya Girl, a novel by Mamle Wolo, Chapter 5. Please like our videos, subscribe, hit the bell for more exciting videos.
Chapter 5.
Our trip into cyberspace was interrupted by a customer. As the door opened, I pushed Faiza away from the computer and she grabbed a broom and busied herself with it at the far end of the shop, like a regular worker. The customer wanted some costume jewelry and I brought out several sets from their glass display case. She chose one, paid for it and left. As I put the others away, I lingered a little, arrested by the way in which the light brought them to life, like sparkling rainbows. Faiza put down her broom and came over to look too. On an impulse, I put one of the necklaces around her neck and pushed her in front of the mirror. "Woy!" She exclaimed, horrified and delighted at the same time. She made to take it off but I stopped her. "Don't worry," I said, "Auntie is far away. Let's have some fun." And I put the matching bracelet on her wrist and slipped the dangling earrings into her ears. We both looked into the mirror and laughed. The flashy jewels looked so incongruous on her with her faded t-shirt and wrapper cloth. I grabbed a glossy piece of sea green sateen from the fabric rack, passed it under her armpits and fastened it around her bust, ignoring her protests. It fell to her feet and flowed out around her. Then I took a rich, wine-colored sequined lace from the display cabinet and draped it around her shoulders so that her t-shirt was completely hidden. While she pleaded with me to stop the madness, I went to the cupboard and took out the green and silver gelly that I had been practicing tying and folding ever since Auntie Omotola next door had given me a lesson. It had become quite a hobby, like origami, and I was particularly proud of my latest arrangement, with several tiny, hidden pins keeping in place the rows of folds that opened out into a fan at the crown of the head. I removed Faiza's usual small headscarf and crowned her with this majestic headpiece. We looked in the mirror again and this time nobody laughed. Faiza was beautiful. She looked like a different person. I saw things in her that I had never seen before. Her high cheekbones were accentuated by the angles of her headdress. The rich fabrics next to her skin brought out its velvety smoothness and the kohl she always wore under her eyes stood out sharply against the whites of her eyes, which sparkled as if competing with the jewels hanging from her ears. Even the tribal marks on her cheeks now lent her an exotic look, like a queen of an ancient empire. "Faiza," I breathed. She smiled her immense smile, making this new portrait of herself even more spectacular. Gifty appeared behind us in the mirror, staring at Faiza as if she had never seen her before. It was as if a magic spell had frozen us all in time. Then Gifty broke it, coming back to her usual self with "You two are really looking for trouble now." I opened the door and peeked outside but there was no sign of Auntie or of any other customers heading our way. I was still on a high so I told Gifty to mind her own business and gave her some money to go and buy sweets for all of us. I knew that would get her out of the way for a while and at the same time, make her less troublesome. She loved sweets and was always pestering me to buy them for her. After she left, I took down one of the ready-made baboos and slipped it over my head. It was purple with elaborate embroidery all the way down the front, from neck to hem in pink, edged with glinting, metallic gold. I put on another set of costume jewelry with glittering pink stones. I ran a comb through my permed hair and fluffed it out, tying the matching purple strip around it like an Alice band. I grabbed Auntie's pink lipstick from her handbag and streaked it across my lips. Then I did the same to Faiza. We stood next to each other in front of the mirror, like women who would need to be presented with many headpans full of luxurious goods before anyone could ask for the hand of their daughter in marriage. We each folded our arms and stood back to back, our profiles against the mirror. For once, Faiza matched my height because of her headdress. "Who do you think I am?" I asked in a queenly voice, with an extravagant gesture of my hand. "How dare you bring these nyama things to ask for my daughter's hand?" Faiza spluttered with laughter. "Sister, what do you say to this presumptuous young man?" I continued, turning towards her with my nose in the air. "Never," she said, recovering quickly from her laughing fit and slipping into her role as if she had rehearsed it. "Can you not see that we are queens? Look at our robes and our jewels. We shall never give you our princess. She is too good for you." We both laughed so hard that we did not hear Gifty come back in. "Auntie is here," she hissed breathlessly. She had obviously tried to stay ahead of Auntie Lydia, but I spotted her through the gap in the door, just a couple of paces away. Faiza and I looked at each other with our hearts in our mouths. Disaster was upon us and there was nothing we could do about it. But just as Auntie put her hand on the door handle, Auntie Omotola called out from next door dash. "Ma Lydia, I hear your new best friend is a minister's wife, ABI." News traveled fast in the market. So that was what that lady was, I thought, still standing rooted to the spot. No wonder. No be small tin o, my sister. Auntie called back, lapsing into pidgin as she liked to do with that lady. They both spoke good English, but Auntie Lydia always preferred to speak Chui with her friends, and as Auntie Omotola spoke no Ghanaian language, they chose pidgin as a more convivial vehicle of communication. I loved hearing Auntie Omotola speak Nigerian pidgin. I especially loved it when she exclaimed, "Nawao." Auntie Lydia's hand remained on the door handle, pushing it slightly further ajar while she spoke to Auntie Omotola. If she had just looked through the crack, she would have seen us standing frozen inside, like dolled-up statues. As she lingered at the doorway, I felt a rivulet of sweat slide down the nape of my neck to the hollow of my back, yet my fingers and toes were freezing cold. I realized I was trembling. With a superhuman effort I steadied myself and started to formulate a plan. Here was a chance, albeit a slim one, to avert disaster, and it would be foolish to miss it by succumbing to panic. I motioned to Faiza and we both backed slowly and noiselessly out of Auntie's line of sight. If I pray hard enough, I thought. Yes. She was releasing her grip on the door handle and turning away, towards Auntie Omo's shop. I knew my auntie. She could not resist showing off her new conquest. She was going to have a little gossip next door before she came back to the shop. And of course, Auntie Omo would be hoping to benefit from this new customer. After all, it was not a long walk from here to her shop, and as she had told me when she gave me my lesson, every good lace needed a good galley. There was no time to lose. I grabbed Faiza's hand and pulled her out of the door, risking everything on the chance that Auntie would keep her back turned. A fleeting glance showed her to be leaning over Auntie Omo's counter, gesticulating with her hands to add more flavor to her florid account of the day in pidgin. The risk had paid off. We dared not linger, and I pulled Faiza in the opposite direction, rounded the first corner and dashed into an alley where the hubbub of noise and activity drowned out our panic. We leaned against a wall, panting for breath. I looked at Faiza. "Nawao," she said, and we burst into hysterical giggles. We laughed for what seemed like forever because we just could not seem to stop. I really wonder if we could ever have stopped if a man at a nearby shop had not called out to us, "Happy sisters, come and look at my things." We looked at him and then at each other once again. "I have lovely things for beautiful ladies like you," he continued, pronouncing it beautiful, in an attempt at an American accent. A fresh round of giggles broke out but gave way to gasps, and finally to sobriety as the reality of the situation struck us with full force. In our flight and our relief at escaping, we had momentarily forgotten what we looked like. Now we realized what we were being taken for real, rich ladies. I will never forget Faiza at that moment. She turned towards him with perfect poise, her fanned headdress profiling beautifully, and said in English more polished than I had ever realized she possessed, "Why not?" And she pulled me by the hand towards the shop. I felt as if I were walking with a stranger, and the sense of unreality grew as we browsed through the fancy goods in the shop, acting for all the world as if this was what we did every day. Faiza made it so easy. She would hold out a dress on a hanger and say to me, "How about this one?" And I would hold it against myself, hemming and hawing, while she cocked her head to one side and made comments in flawless English like, "No, not your color, not your style." How did she do it? I wondered. And then it came to me in a flash. Of course, she had been watching her customers, the rich ladies who shopped at boutiques. She had had plenty of opportunity to study the ways of a madam. And she had probably supplemented this by memorizing phrases she heard in films. The market was such a vast and public space, and it was easy for a Kiayu to catch snatches of videos and telenovelas. What made it so amazing was that it was not just the language she mimicked so perfectly, it was the mannerisms as well. Gifty would have been green with envy. But that was the difference between them. Faiza only did it for a laugh. She would never be anything but herself with people who mattered to her. The shop attendant's face mirrored the rise and fall of his hopes as we played out the scene perfectly, managing to hold in our laughter till we had extricated ourselves and rounded another corner. "I can't believe he took us seriously," I gasped, hardly able to get the words out. My sides ached with laughter. Faiza too was doubled over, one hand steadying her gelly, which threatened to fall off as her body shook with mirth. When I look back, I cannot believe that we were laughing and fooling around instead of getting out of those clothes as quickly as possible and finding a way to return them and ourselves safely to Auntie's shop. But we were girls drunk with adventure, taking courage from each other, and we could not resist venturing into a few more shops, doing our rich ladies act. The more seriously we were taken, the more our confidence grew. I cannot remember who pulled whom, but somehow we both knew where we would end up, and sure enough, there we suddenly were in front of Blankson's Electricals. Mr. Blankson had a pair of handsome nephews whom Faiza and I had discussed on more than one occasion. They were brothers, similar but different, cool as cucumbers, and we had nicknamed them Peter and Paul, like the P-Square twins. They were also on long vacation from school and were assisting their uncle in his shop. They showed people how to use the electrical gadgets on sale and helped with repairs of electrical machines like fans and televisions. They always made sure the latest hip-hop or hip-life music was blaring from the shop. Somehow, we always seemed to pass that shop on our way to the food stalls and most other places we went together, whether or not it was really on the way. The boys were both older than us and they had never noticed us before, but today it was different. "May I help you?" asked our Peter, whom Faiza had somehow found out was really called Steven. He was cute all right and well built too. He looked at Faiza closely, a half smile playing on his lips, and I noticed that the confidence she had displayed in the other shops waned under his gaze. I came to her rescue. "We want to buy a TV please," I heard myself announce. Steven led us to the TV section, not taking his eyes off her. There were many television sets and they all seemed to be showing different things, including, on one, an episode of Mr. Bean. Faiza started watching it. Steven's brother, our Paul, joined us, tall and lanky with a crooked grin that flashed white against black. There was a fresh, spicy scent about him that made me inhale so deeply that I felt lightheaded. I looked over at Faiza to see what she thought of him, but she was absorbed in Mr. Bean and had started chuckling in spite of herself. Steven was laughing too, and then they would look at each other and laugh harder. It reminded me of how
Daddy always said that he and I had our funny bone in the same spot. I realized that Paul was talking to me, wanting to know what type of television set we wanted. Oh dear, I hadn't thought of that.
"Plasma," I said with the sudden inspiration of word association. "Plasma," he repeated, impressed. "Sure, come this way." We walked away from the other two and he showed me a number of plasma screens, but I found it much easier to take in the details of his appearance than the specifications of those television sets. All the same, I pretended to be fascinated because that way I could keep him talking and dashing that grin that gave me a pleasantly wobbly feeling in the stomach each time. "No one be like you," I sang in my head. "So, which one is it going to be?" he asked finally, jerking me out of my daydream and to the inconvenient reality that I must now buy a TV. "Oh, well actually, I'm not sure they're compatible, you see." He looked puzzled. "Compatible with what?" "Well, with our whole system back home." "How do you mean?" he asked, studying my face. "You know, analog, digital, that sort of thing," I bluffed, fighting down panic. "What?" he asked. Oh dear, I thought, word association could only take one so far, I was in trouble now. "Okay, maybe I'm not explaining it very well," I stammered, "but it's just that my dad told me to make sure it was compatible, and to tell the truth," and I pulled a helpless face, "I'm really not sure what he meant." It worked. The ice was broken. "Well, ba," he teased, flashing the grin, "you'd better tell Daddy to come himself." I grinned too. "Thanks P. I mean, Mike," he supplied, holding out his hand to shake mine. He asked for my name too and said it was a pleasure to meet me. I felt the same way.
End of Chapter 5. Please watch Chapter 6 in the next video. Please, like our videos. Subscribe. Hit the bell, for more exciting videos.